What would you do if the place that held every memory of your childhood, every laugh, every tear, and every precious moment was suddenly taken away without a single word? Worse still, what if you found out through a stranger's social media post? That is exactly what happened to me. For as long as I can remember, my childhood home was more than just bricks and walls. It was my safe place, my anchor, the one thing that felt permanent in a world full of changes. Every room held a story. The scratch on the living room floor where I learned to ride my bike indoors, the tiny marks on my bedroom wall where I measured my height each year, the backyard tree where I used to sit and dream about the future. That house was my history, my heart. Even after I moved away for college and started building my own life, I always knew that home was waiting for me. No matter how far I went or how much time passed, I could always go back and feel that familiar warmth, that sense of belonging. At least, that's what I thought. One random afternoon, while scrolling through my phone, I stumbled upon a post that made my stomach drop. A stranger was showing off their beautiful new home in a post filled with happy emojis and hashtags. I stared at the screen. My breath caught in my throat. The photos were unmistakable. The porch, the tree in the yard, the view from the bedroom window. It was my house. My childhood home. Sold, gone, and I had no idea. I felt like the ground had crumbled beneath me. My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments, trying to convince myself there had to be some mistake. But there was no mistake. My parents had sold the only place I had ever truly called home, and they hadn't even told me. This is the story of how I lost more than just a house. I lost trust, I lost a piece of myself, and I learned a hard lesson about how quickly the things you hold dear can be taken away. I grew up in a modest but cozy house on Maple Street. It wasn't anything grand, no fancy gates or sprawling gardens, but to me, it was perfect. That house was where I took my first steps, said my first words, and celebrated every birthday until I left for college. Every corner of that place held a piece of me. My parents bought the house before I was born. They used to tell me how excited they were when they first moved in, dreaming about raising a family there, and they did just that. The house was filled with laughter, sometimes with tears, but always with love. We had a small living room where we squeezed onto the old couch for movie nights. The kitchen always smelled of my mom's cooking, especially her famous lasagna that she made every Sunday. My bedroom, painted pale yellow, was my sanctuary. I spent countless hours there, reading, writing, and daydreaming about my future. That house saw every milestone of my childhood. I remember when I broke my arm falling from the tree in the backyard. My dad carried me inside, and my mom tried to stay calm while calling for help. I remember the sleepovers with friends, the endless summer afternoons spent playing hide and seek, and even the quiet winter nights when I would watch the snow fall softly outside my window. Even the flaws of the house made it feel more like home. The creaky floorboard near the staircase, the stubborn window in my room that never fully closed, the faded paint on the porch where I used to sit and watch the world go by. To an outsider, they were imperfections. To me, they were part of the story. As I grew older, the house remained my anchor. When I moved away for college, I always looked forward to coming home during holidays and vacations. No matter how stressful life became, walking through that front door made everything feel okay again. My friends would often say, "You're so lucky to have a home like that to go back to," and I knew they were right. My relationship with my parents was, for the most part, good. We had our share of disagreements, especially during my teenage years, but nothing out of the ordinary. My parents were traditional, a bit strict at times, but I always felt they had my best interests at heart. We weren't the type of family that said, "I love you" out loud very often, but there was a quiet understanding between us. Or so I thought. In recent years, I noticed some subtle changes. Phone calls became shorter, their answers a bit more guarded whenever I asked about home. I remember one call when I asked if they were planning any renovations because they mentioned something about fixing the place up. My mom laughed it off and said, "Oh, just small things, nothing big." I didn't think much of it at the time. I trusted them completely. After all, why wouldn't I? That house represented more than just a building to me. It was my safe space, my history, my identity. Even when life got hard, just knowing that house was there gave me comfort. It was the one constant in a world full of change. I often told my parents how much the house meant to me. I remember saying once, "No matter where life takes me, I always want this to be home. I want to bring my future kids here someday, show them where I grew up." My parents would smile and nod, and I took their silence as agreement. I never imagined they would make such a huge decision without telling me. It never crossed my mind that they would let go of something so important, not just to them, but to me too, without even a conversation. That's why what happened hit me so hard. The home I loved, the place I thought was my forever anchor, had vanished from my life in an instant, and I was the last to know. The moment I saw that post on social media, my heart sank like a stone. I remember staring at my phone in disbelief, blinking rapidly as if my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no matter how many times I refreshed the page, the photos stayed the same. A cheerful young couple was posing in front of my childhood home, smiling ear to ear as they proudly showed off their new dream house. The caption read, "So excited to start this new chapter in the most charming home we could ever imagine." I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. I zoomed in on the photos, scanning every inch for confirmation. There was the old oak tree in the front yard where I used to swing, the cracked pathway that I had walked on a million times. Even the faded blue shutters my dad had promised to repaint but never got around to. It was my home. My heart started racing, and my hands trembled as I kept scrolling through the comments. Friends of the new owners were congratulating them, complimenting the house, talking about how lucky they were to find such a gem. I could not breathe. I called my mom immediately, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely hit the right numbers. The phone rang and rang until she finally picked up. Her voice was casual, like nothing had happened. "Hi, sweetie. Everything okay?" I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but my voice came out shaking. "Mom, did you sell the house?" There was a pause, just a beat too long, and in that silence, I knew the answer. She cleared her throat. "Oh, you saw that?" I felt my stomach twist. "Yes, I saw that. On social media. From strangers. Why didn't you tell me?" Her tone turned defensive. "We didn't think it was a big deal. You don't live here anymore. We thought it was best not to worry you." I could not believe what I was hearing. Not a big deal? This was the house I grew up in, the place I always thought of as my safe haven. I felt my throat tighten as tears welled up in my eyes. It wasn't a big deal? Mom, that was my home too. I told you so many times how much it meant to me. I had to find out from a stranger's post on Facebook. How could you do that? She sighed, sounding tired. It was a hard decision, but your dad and I needed to downsize. The upkeep was too much, and we've been thinking about it for a while. I shook my head, even though she could not see me. Then why didn't you tell me? Why keep it a secret? Her voice grew colder. Because we knew you would get upset. We didn't want the drama. It's just a house. Just a house. Those words felt like a slap. I wanted to scream, to tell her that it was not just a house. It was my entire childhood. But I realized in that moment that no matter what I said, they had already made their decision and moved on. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I replayed every phone call, every subtle hint I had missed, the way they had been vague about renovations, the quiet tone in my dad's voice when I asked how things were going back home. It all made sense now, but it did not make it hurt any less. In the following days, I avoided calling them. I needed space to process everything. But everywhere I looked, something reminded me of that house. A photo on my wall, a mug from the kitchen. Even my dreams were filled with memories of running through those familiar halls, only to wake up and remember it was gone. I talked to a few close friends, hoping they would help me make sense of it. Some were sympathetic, saying they would have been heartbroken too. Others tried to rationalize it, reminding me that my parents had the right to do what they wanted with their property. But none of that changed the crushing weight I felt in my chest. After a week of silence, my dad finally called. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me needed closure. "Hi, kiddo," he said softly. "We know you're upset. We never wanted to hurt you." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Then why didn't you tell me?" He sighed. "Because we knew it would break your heart, and honestly, it broke ours too. But we couldn't keep the house forever. We're getting older, and it was too much to handle." There was a long pause. I wanted to yell, to cry, to tell him how betrayed I felt. But instead, I just whispered, "You should have trusted me enough to let me be part of that decision." He was quiet for a moment. "You're right, we made a mistake." Hearing those words gave me a small sense of validation, but it didn't erase the hurt. I ended the call politely, but my heart still ached. That was the moment I realized that sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us in ways we never expect. And no matter how much we want things to stay the same, life keeps moving forward, whether we are ready or not. After that last phone call with my dad, I thought the worst was over. I told myself that I needed to accept reality and move on. But deep down, something still gnawed at me. There were too many unanswered questions, too many things that did not sit right in my heart. A week later, while I was catching up with my cousin Rachel, I told her everything that had happened. She listened quietly, her face tight with concern. Then she hesitated and said something that made my stomach drop. "You know, your parents mentioned selling the house to my mom months ago. They said it was because of financial issues, but there was something else." I frowned, my heart starting to race again. "What do you mean, something else?" Rachel looked uncomfortable. "I probably shouldn't say anything, but they mentioned that they were upset with you. They felt like you had grown distant, like you did not care about the family anymore. My mom said they felt hurt that you barely visited, and they thought selling the house was a way to, I don't know, make a fresh start." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious? I mean, sure, I've been busy with work and my own life, but I always called, I always cared. I never once thought they felt like I abandoned them." Rachel nodded slowly. "I know you did, but I think they kept a lot of feelings bottled up." That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake thinking about every conversation, every missed visit, every holiday I had skipped because of work deadlines or personal reasons. I started questioning myself. Had I really been that absent? Did my parents feel so neglected that they made a decision this drastic out of hurt rather than necessity? The next day, I called my mom. This time, I was determined to get the full truth. "Mom," I said carefully, "I need you to be honest with me. Was selling the house only about the money? Or was there something more?" There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear her breathing. Finally, she spoke, her voice shaking. "It was mostly the money. The upkeep was hard, and we were struggling more than we let on, but it's true that we felt left behind. You were always busy. You stopped coming home as often. We felt like we were holding on to the house for someone who didn't seem to need it anymore." Her words cut deep. I felt tears sting my eyes as I whispered, "Mom, that house wasn't just for me. It was for all of us. It was our home, our memories. I never stopped caring. I thought we were okay." She sniffled softly. "We should have told you. We should have talked to you about how we were feeling. But we were angry and sad, and we didn't want to fight with you." In that moment, I realized the full picture. This wasn't just about a house. It was about years of unspoken feelings, disappointments, and misunderstandings that had built up over time. The house had become a symbol of all of it, and selling it was their way of moving on from the hurt they had buried deep inside. I felt a wave of guilt mixed with sadness. I had been so focused on my own feelings of betrayal and loss that I never considered how they might have been feeling all along. "I wish you had told me," I said softly. "I wish we had talked about all of this before it got to this point." My mom's voice was thick with emotion. "We wish that too." That conversation, though painful, brought a strange sense of clarity. I realized that love, even within families, is fragile if not nurtured with honesty and communication. I had assumed that my parents knew how much I loved and valued them, but assumptions are dangerous. At the same time, they had assumed I was fine, without realizing how much their silence had hurt me. As the days that followed, I made a conscious effort to rebuild our connection. We talked more openly, even if it was uncomfortable at times. I apologized for making them feel forgotten, and they apologized for shutting me out of such a huge decision. It wasn't easy, and it didn't fix everything overnight, but it was a start. The biggest twist of all was realizing that the betrayal I felt wasn't as simple as it seemed. It wasn't just about the house. It was about wounds on both sides that had never fully healed. And while the house was gone forever, the chance to repair our relationship was still there. I also learned a hard but important lesson. No matter how much we love someone, if we don't show up, if we don't put in the effort to truly connect, that love can fade or be misinterpreted. I had thought my phone calls and quick visits were enough, but my parents needed more than that. They needed to feel seen, valued, and included. By the end of that month, we had made plans to spend a weekend together at a rental house. It wasn't the same as being in my childhood home, but for the first time in a long while, we laughed, shared stories, and felt like a family again. And in a strange way, losing the house forced us to face the deeper cracks in our relationship that we might have otherwise ignored. It hurt like hell, but it also gave us a second chance to rebuild something even stronger. In the months that followed, I found myself driving past my old neighborhood more often than I cared to admit. Each time, my eyes would linger on that familiar street, my heart tightening as I approached what used to be my home. The new owners had repainted the shutters, added new flowers to the front yard, and even put up a new mailbox. It looked beautiful, but it no longer looked like mine. The first few times I passed by, I felt like an outsider, peeking into someone else's life, even though that place had once been the center of my entire world. I would sit in my car down the street, staring at the house, remembering every detail that was now gone. The laughter in the kitchen, the late-night talks with my mom in the living room, the way my dad would whistle while fixing things around the yard, all of it was just memories now. Losing the house felt like losing a part of my identity. For weeks, I felt adrift, like a balloon cut loose from its string. I didn't know where I belonged anymore. Even though I had my own apartment, my own life, there was something about knowing that childhood home still existed that made me feel secure. Now, that anchor was gone. My relationship with my parents remained tender and fragile. We talked more openly after that twist of truth came out, but there were still moments when resentment bubbled to the surface. Sometimes I would catch myself getting distant again, pulling back out of hurt. Other times, my mom would sound a little too formal on the phone, as if unsure of where we stood. Healing, I learned, is never linear. It is messy and complicated, filled with progress and setbacks. One of the hardest lessons I had to accept was that home is not always a physical place. I used to think that as long as the house stood, my memories and sense of belonging would be safe. But the truth is, bricks and walls can be torn down, sold, or painted over. What truly lasts are the feelings, the lessons, and the love that we carry with us. I started to pour my emotions into writing. I filled journal after journal with stories of my childhood, trying to capture every detail so nothing would be forgotten. I even created a small photo album, printing out old pictures and writing little notes beside each one. It was my way of preserving the past, even if the physical space was lost forever. I also made an effort to create new traditions with my parents. We began meeting up regularly for dinner, sometimes at their new downsized home, sometimes at my place. We talked more honestly than we ever had before, sharing feelings that had long been buried under politeness and assumptions. It wasn't easy, and sometimes old wounds would sting, but it was worth it. One evening, as we were sitting together after dinner, my mom looked at me with tears in her eyes. She said softly, "I miss the old house too, every day. But having you here, having these moments with you, that's what matters the most." Her words hit me deeply. In that moment, I realized that while we had lost the house, we were slowly rebuilding something even more valuable: trust, understanding, and connection. Of course, there are still days when I feel the ache of what was lost. Sometimes, out of nowhere, a memory will hit me so hard that it takes my breath away. I will hear a song that reminds me of home or catch the scent of fresh-cut grass and be transported back to those long summer afternoons in the backyard. And yes, it still hurts. But over time, I have come to accept that life is full of unexpected endings and new beginnings. We do not always get a say in what stays and what goes. What we can control is how we respond, how we heal, and how we choose to carry the past with us. Today, I am learning to redefine what home means. It is not a specific address or a set of walls. Home is in the people who love you, in the memories that shape you, and in the strength you find within yourself when everything else falls apart. To anyone who has ever lost a place that meant everything to them, I want you to know this: your memories are yours to keep, no matter what happens to the physical space. And even when it feels like the ground has been ripped out from under you, you will find new footing. You will build new homes within your heart. I will always miss my childhood home, but now I know that my true home is not something that can be bought or sold. It is something that lives inside me. Always.